Once again, welcome and thanks for being here. My name is Steve Cochran from WL. It is an honor to be here again with my friend and one of my personal heroes in life, General John Borling, and of course all of you. We have a duty on this day to remember, and remember we will for all the right reasons. You're all great patriots, and you all understand this, but I also feel that, and I say this whenever I have an opportunity to stand in front of a microphone like this, we have an obligation to preach, an obligation to go out today and tell your friends and your neighbors, and especially young folks, the true meaning of Memorial Day and what it's all about. My wife and daughter are here. My wife and I got back just a couple of weeks ago from a trip into history where we took a bunch of WLS listeners to historic D-Day sites, the Battle of the Bulge in Luxembourg, and also to Normandy. And we stood on the beach at Omaha, and we saw where so many gave their lives in that epic battle that led the way to today and the freedoms that we have today. But I was particularly struck by one man in particular on the trip whose father gave his life in World War II and son gave his life in Afghanistan. And as we stood on the grounds of the American Cemetery in Normandy, where 10,000 men and women are buried, all at the average age of 19 or 20. He was carrying the dog tags of both his father and his son. Now, I am the son of a veteran, but there's no way that any of us can truly pay back the sacrifice that was made, not just by those that were lost, but also by the families that gave so much. There's really nothing that I can think of that has the combination of pain and pride as a result of losing someone in defense of this country. But thank God for all of them. 600,000 since World War I. It's about the population of Boston or Detroit or Nashville, all gone. We don't know what they would have done with their lives. We don't know how they would have changed America. But we do know that they did the work we didn't have to do. And that's why we can be here today. The other day, my friend John Borling corrected me on the air, and rightfully so. And I think it's a fundamental mistake that goes to the preaching I talked about when I said next Monday, today, we were going to celebrate Memorial Day. And he rightly said, we don't celebrate Memorial Day, we commemorate Memorial Day. It's a very important difference. This afternoon, I hope you do celebrate. I hope you're with family and friends. I hope you're in the pool. And I hope nobody posts a video of me in the pool on the internet. But I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you enjoy your family. But I truly believe there's an obligation to teach others what Memorial Day means. It's more than just flying your flag, and that's vitally important. But find a youngster that doesn't know or an adult who doesn't know and politely tell them what this day is all about. Because if we can't take time to just take a step back and quietly thank those who came before us, then we're missing the boat. And in this beautiful city, and it's great to see Mayor Johnson here and the tough fight he has every day and ahead. We need him to be great and have faith that he will, with a team around him that can keep the city so beautiful. On this beautiful city's grounds, on this beautiful day in front of the Logan statue, my great pride now is to introduce to you a man who awarded his awards and his honors would take the rest of the afternoon just to go on. And though I'd like to make him uncomfortable and go through all of them, I think we're going to move forward. And please welcome General John Borling.
If you drive north out of Springfield, you come to a town called Lincoln, Illinois. This was the only town named for Abraham Lincoln before he was a president. In 1851, he was helping to lay out the city and had established the plots, and history has it that he bought a couple of watermelon and walked down to the city fathers, and they were eating watermelon and spraying it on the ground as kind of toasting the formation of this new city. And they said, somebody said, you know, we ought to call this city Lincoln. And Lincoln's reaction was that nothing really much of importance has ever been done by anybody named Lincoln. And he was diminishing of the moment. But so it was named Lincoln in 1851. And you're also in Logan County. John A. Logan County. But it's not him. It's his father, who was a state representative in those days, and the fame and the exploits of Major General John A. Logan, some of which we will hear about today, came later, pre, during, and after certainly the Civil War, when he was a figure recognized for excellence and support of the Union, a great friend of Grant and of Lincoln, and in fact, along with them are the only three people mentioned in the Illinois State Song. So that's part of why we gather here today. But we have a program, this 27th annual event here in the shadow of Major General Logan, because as you know and will hear repetitively today, he's the man who founded Memorial Day, an Illinoisan. And we gather here because of that. But we begin the program, as we always do, thanking Steve Cochran, the ever-popular radio host that you just listened to. We begin with a presentation of the colors presented by Detachment 195 from Illinois IIT and 17 other schools, and now of University of Chicago. They've just moved. So I will ask them to come forward. I would ask you all, if able, to stand and present the colors, please. With them, their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Matt Weaver, Air Force, obviously, and he will be helping with the program, and a great and new friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the colors of the United States.
Guard. Halt. Right. Case. Ready, done. Arms.
At this point, I would like Anil Barrett to come forward. Anil is a naturalized American citizen from high school, born in India. It's appropriate that we have an entrepreneur, an expert in technology, a man who has made and calls America his home, to lead us in the pledge to the flag. A good friend of mine, a man to know, a man who's making a difference in America, and his family is with him today. Anil Barrett.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, General Borling. Honorary guest, honorary Mayor, Mr. Brandon Johnson, and Ms. Preckwinkle. I'd like to welcome everyone to say the pledge. So please, with your right hand, and proudly, I would like to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And now, as is the norm, the custom here, Sharon Carlson and her granddaughter Olivia will provide us, along with David Underdunk, you see the card of musical information, the national anthem. Sharon and Olivia, please.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous
Olivia Knack, please be seated. Olivia Knack is a senior at Peyton Prep, going to college. She's been touring with our a cappella choir for a number of years and has a very bright future ahead of us. Again, I commend your attention to the small card, the small program card that has the musical talent information on it, and you can see what not only Sharon and Olivia provide, but also Dave Underdunk, our guitarist here for many years. Now comes a really important part of the program, because you get to meet a really important Borling, and his name is Don Borling. He's the pastor of All Saints Lutheran Church in Orland Park. And if there's a star in the family, it would be this guy. So I'd like to have him come forward and provide us with invocation. He's here with his family and my nephew Q, who you'll meet later. And you'll note that Don's knees are the equal of mine. So we welcome Don Borling.
It's a incredible honor to be here again. And to my cousin John and Myrna, I just want to thank you for the goodness and the honor for keeping us as human beings and Americans on the right track. You give so much, and I'm just proud to be a part of your family. Let us pray. Lord, we call you by many names, but today we are united in that incredible collision of your spirit and the human spirit. I can't imagine, Lord, the knock on the door. Your loved one has died in combat in service to your country. Line after line of white tombstones with the names of those who have sacrificed and served. Flanders Field, so long ago, a veteran on the corner giving poppies away, so we never forget and continue to honor the fallen. From Arlington to Lincoln National, sacred places of remembrance and sacrifice. Soldiers have died for what they believe in. I've never made that kind of sacrifice, Lord. But in honor of and in memory of them, I can dig deep, deep within my own soul, and give unto others, and give back in thanksgiving for what I've been given, to share and to reach out in honor of those who have sacrificed so much for all of us. And so today we pray, we care, we honor them. Help each one of us make a difference, Lord. It's what we are called to do. Amen. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. And now you know why he's the best part of the Borling family, other than for my wife Myrna, who is, and my wife of 60 years, I may comment this year. I want to thank you for that public recognition of how much I've contributed to the marital enterprise. It means a lot. I hope Myrna took note. This is our 27th year as we continue to footstop. It was in 1997, the 100th anniversary of the Logan statue that you see behind me. And in 1897, there were 250,000 people in the street to honor Major General John A. Logan and to inaugurate this marvelous statue by Augustus St. Gaudens. In 1997, 100 years later, Mayor Daley then asked John Borling, newly retired from the service, to bring back the Memorial Day ceremonies to Chicago, including the Daley Center and the parade that go on Saturday, and an event here at the Logan statue. And over the years, involved with all three of those things, we've focused now on the Logan statue, given the historical record that he represents and that it represents to the nation. We can be very proud of that Illinoisan. But it's important that we perhaps flesh that theme out a bit more, and I can't think of anyone better to do that than the gentleman who comes up next. It's Dr. Mark Depew, who was the head of oral history at the Presidential Library in Springfield. Mark is a West Point graduate. He is also recognized scholar and been a longtime friend and supporter. He's keynoted here in previous years. And Mark comes up from Springfield, and with his wife, Sue Young, we are delighted that he is going to remind us of why we gather here. Mark Depew.
Thank you all for being here today. We have God to thank for this glorious weather, but we all know that the other group that we have to thank for being able to be here today are all those veterans in those generations past who have paid the ultimate price so that we can have the pleasure to be here, so that our relatives can meet over cookouts, we can go to the ballpark, but especially today, to take just a few moments and to remember the sacrifices that they made so we can do this. I wanted to start not with General Logan, but with former Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Colin Powell, because back at the turn of the century, Time magazine was asking people who they thought was the most important citizens of the 20th century. And here is what Colin Powell said. Near the top of any listing of the most important people of the 20th century must stand, in singular honor, the American GI. They were America. They reflected our diverse origins. They were in the embodiment of the American spirit of courage and dedication. America's GIs were willing to travel far away and to give their lives, if necessary, to secure the rights and freedoms of others. Only nations such as ours, based on a firm moral foundation, could make such a request for its citizens. So that's what Colin Powell said at the turn of the century, and I know that John A. Logan would have great sympathy. He would be in the agreement totally with what Colin Powell said, because he, really almost more than anybody else in his generation, knew what had been sacrificed by over the 600,000 Americans that died during the Civil War. So a little bit about John A. Logan. Born and raised in Southern Illinois, he was a man who had shared the prejudices of his neighbors at the time. But by 1861, he knew that he was all in for the Union. He joined the cause. Eventually, he raised the 31st Infantry Regiment of Illinois and went off to war, fought with Grant at Vicksburg, stayed in the Western Theater. He was a politician before the war, but he had the distinction of being what they called the political generals. In other words, he was a general officer who was not a West Pointer. That was pretty rare. There was a lot of politicians who had aspirations at that time. He is considered, and I certainly believe, the very best of the political generals of the Civil War. And part of the proof of that is for a short period of time, after General McPherson died during the siege of Atlanta, Logan became the commander of the entire Army of Tennessee. So he has that distinction as well. After the war, he comes back to Illinois. He soon is going to be a politician. He had a training as a lawyer as well. He changed parties, and by 1868, he is also commander of the Grand Army of the Republic. Shortly after that, he was in Congress for a couple of terms, and then he became a U.S. Senator as well, a supporter of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, a great friend of African Americans. And he had made that change in his life because he had seen African Americans serving in the Civil War. He had seen their sacrifices. He'd seen their skill and their commitment. And he came back a changed man because of that experience. So, in 1868, as I mentioned, he's the commander of the Grand Army Republic. And in that capacity of all these Union soldiers, he put out this message. Order number 11. The 30th day of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the Great Rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city village, hamlet, churchyard in the land. His fellow GAR members certainly honored that, and thus started the tradition that became known as Decoration Day for a couple generations, but by the time you get to the 20th century, became known as Memorial Day, a federally recognized holiday. And the only one that's really identifying those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and died for their country. So it's only fitting that we take a few moments today and remember those sacrifices and respect what they have given to this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for salient points of history, and it's going to continue as we hear from our newly elected mayor, Brandon Johnson, and he will be followed after an interregnum of music, etc., by our keynote speaker, President Tony Preckwinkle, who is the president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. But it is my pleasure and honor, having just met him, to welcome to the podium and his remarks, Mayor Brandon Johnson. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. As a social studies teacher, I am having the time of my life right now. Thank you, Mark, for that wonderful historical lesson, and the person you're going to hear after me is also a social studies teacher. So thank you for not nodding off. We appreciate that. You know, as the history was just so eloquently described, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the fact that I would not be here representing the soul of our ancestors in the city of Chicago if it were not for the soldiers whose humanity had not been recognized, that they stood for democracy. And I also know, as someone who is highly qualified as an historian to teach up to 12th grade, how black people decorated the grave sites of those fallen black soldiers. But this is what makes Memorial Day such a remarkable, not just ceremony, but commemoration, is that through the collective struggle for democracy and liberation, that is ultimately what brought this nation together. That this nation did not flinch or fold when there were those who wanted to divide us, and that the ultimate sacrifice of those who paid the price for our liberation, I will always be grateful. And of course, in recognition of Memorial Day and all the service people who gave their lives for the good of this country, I'm honored that I will have the opportunity to lay a wreath here at the General John Logan Monument. Because this monument honors General Johnny Logan, a respected Illinois-born Union commander in the Civil War. And Chicago remembers General Logan's service not only in the war, but as a leader who established the observances of this day for our nation. And we gather on this day every year to solemnly remember our nation's servicemen and women who fought and made, again, the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. We must continually, of course, remember their sacrifice, honor their memory, and ensure that their legacy lives on. Knowing the dangers and the risks, these heroes forged ahead anyways to serve a righteous cause. So of course it is our duty as grateful residents to preserve the values for which they fought and to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago and nation that is worthy of their sacrifice. We must strive to uphold the principles of equality, justice, and freedom in order to truly honor our fallen heroes. Their loss is profound, and they deserve our unwavering gratitude and love and support every day. And then finally, to the families and loved ones of servicemen and women, thank you for your contributions. and your sacrifice that you too have made for our nation. I pray that you continue to find peace and comfort. It is certainly humbling. It's a tremendous honor to join you today to uplift the names and memories of husbands, wives, daughters, sons, and friends who so courageously made life better for all of us. Again, the city of Chicago, the greatest city in the world. We will continue to not just recognize, but live out the incredible sacrifices that so many people have made for our liberation. And thank you for your continuous support. May God bless the city of Chicago, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Delighted to have you with us today, sir. Great. I can't resist another historical note in 1869 with Grant now the president after the 1868 declaration of Decoration Day. Grant oversaw as president the official ceremonies in Arlington, or at Arlington. And he made it a special responsibility that as the flowers were strewn on the graves, that they didn't neglect the Confederate graves. So Union and Confederate graves were decorated in those days, and in the parades that occurred after the war and into the early 1910s and 20s and 30s, it was not unusual to see Confederate and Union soldiers marching hand in hand in those parades. Is there a lesson for today on that? I suggest that there is. But now the lesson is going to be enjoyment of yet another musical moment with Sharon and Olivia and David, and God Bless America. Please.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. From the mountain to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Very well done. Thank you, dear. For those of you who've been here at previous commemorations, I never failed to mention that Sharon Carlson, maiden name Surface, not only did we go to high school together, I know she looks so much younger than me, but she's the one who taught me how to rock and roll. Remember when all the guys would stand up against the wall and the women would be doing all the dancing? Sharon, who was a wonderful dancer and as you saw on the card, storied career in terms of teaching voice and acting at Columbia, is a classmate. Along with, I may add, because Hirsch High School knows no bounds of bragging, Ed Ford, who is Ed, I think it's true, sitting behind President Preckwinkle, the longest owned African-American business in the downtown loop, Edward Ford Jewelers, and again, a classmate and a friend for 60 years. And with him, the treasurer of the class, next to daughter Alana, is Fred Sandstrom. So we're well represented here, and in previous days, Frank Clark was here, but he was a young guy. He came in about 4 years after we graduated. So anyway, I have done my duty now and recognize the musical talents of Sharon and Olivia, but more than that, put a plug in for the South Side guys, all right? When Myrna and I left the service in 1997, after kicking around 10 years in Europe, 10 years in Asia, from Minot, North Dakota, where 52 degrees below zero keeps out the riffraff, by the way, and Laredo, Texas, and both our daughters born in California. Fighter pilots have girls. It's God's revenge. And his great blessing, I may add, his great blessing. When we came back in those days and reconnected, if you will, with folks, I moved into Hyde Park, a place that my grandfather, working for great-grandfather, working for Paul Cornell, had helped build, and in fact bought Carol Mosley Braun's flat, and Carol and I have remained friends throughout all these years. But in those days, there was this young, hard-charging alderman by the name of Preckwinkle, who was destined for additional political service and fame, and it continues to this day. I think we're very fortunate to have the president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners with us to keynote today. So an old friend, Tony Preckwinkle. Thanks so much.
Good morning. I'm grateful to be here today to remember and honor all of those who've served in the military, in particular those who were lost to us. I want to thank all of our veterans and our Gold Star families who have joined us. You've had to carry the heartache and the loss of a parent, a sibling, a child, a friend. And today we pay our respects to you and to them. I would also like to acknowledge all the residents who've joined us to observe this holiday, and thank you all for being here. Today, our nation pauses to remember the brave souls deployed in combat, sometimes half a world away, never to return to their families. They defended our principles and our freedom. They laid down their lives so that we could live ours freely. They paid the ultimate price so we could reap the rewards. For that, we're immeasurably humbled and grateful. Today, we lay wreaths at the statue of General John A. Logan, an Illinois native who served under General Grant during the Civil War. Among his many accomplishments, both on the battlefield and in political office, he's credited with helping establish Memorial Day, which, as you heard, he originally dubbed Decoration Day, because he believed all Americans should take time to decorate the graves of the fallen with flowers. Now, as Mayor Johnson said, I'm a social studies teacher as he is. So I want to talk a little bit about what was referred to earlier as the shared prejudices of his neighbors. He shared the prejudices of his neighbors. He was a soldier in the Mexican-American War. As a young lawyer, he was elected to the General Assembly in Illinois in 1852. In 1853, he sponsored a series of anti-African-American laws, anti-black laws, called Logan Laws. Basically, they fined free African-Americans, free blacks, who migrated to Illinois and imposed a 10-day jail sentence on them. I want to say that again. They fined free blacks that migrated to Illinois and imposed a 10-day jail sentence on them. These measures were overwhelmingly passed by the state legislature in Illinois. You know, I think it's important not to gloss over our history. We live in a complicated country with a complicated history. And we shouldn't pretend that the people who we honor were perfect and simply say that they shared the prejudices of their neighbors. What he did was despicable. He was also very hostile to abolitionists and was quite public about that. But as a Christian, I believe in the possibility of redemption and transformation. And as you heard from other speakers, as a result of his experience in the Civil War, particularly the heroism of African American soldiers, he changed his views. And in 1864, in the presidential election, he converted from being a Democrat, that's how he got elected to the General Assembly and to Congress earlier, and became a Republican and supported Lincoln's reelection. We honor him today for his military service in the Civil War and the Mexican-American War. We honor him for being the founder of Decoration Day, Memorial Day, but we shouldn't forget either his past or this state's past. So, you know, one of the things I love about holidays like this is those of us who aren't social studies teachers have the opportunity to share some of our appreciation for history with others, and in contrast to every other day, they're more likely maybe to pay attention. So, I want to honor those who served our country. My father served in the Second World War. It was an absolutely miserable experience for him. And he never talked about it, quite oddly. But I am grateful to him for his service and to all who have worn a uniform of the United States, all including General John Logan. Thank you.
The moment of wreath laying is upon us, but before we do, I would like Colonel Weaver to reposition the colors.
Detachment 195, prepare to reposition the colors.
You know, I'm struck by the comments today, and the motto of the United States before it's "In God We Trust" was "E pluribus unum," out of one many. And I think that it is important to shine a light on both the things that are distasteful in our past, but then is not glory resident, be it in individual lives or in a movie that's going to be made, an epic movie on Memorial Day, when one man's life is transformed, and with the help of friends, he helps transform the world. Those words were echoed, not a direct translation or quotation, but echoed by Stephen Douglas about John Logan after the Civil War. And so this imperfect world we live in, where we take steps forward and steps back and steps forward again, and yet if we look at the glory and the plenty of this land around us, we can only be grateful that we were born and remain loyal Americans. And in that vein, we will honor our war dead by the laying of wreaths, beginning with the help of Jill Green, who is going to position herself here, and the solemn wreath-laying ceremony will commence. It will be followed, as you saw in your program, by additional military honors, and then it will be followed by what we hope is a convivial, as it has always been, picnic in the park. But for the moment, let us commence with our wreath-laying program. And we'll begin with the United States Army. And while I have Jill here from Wisconsin, by the way, she is going to now be joined by her husband, Major Dave Green, combat experience veteran, Force for Good in the VFW forces in Wisconsin, and a person who he and his wife travel here every year to be part of our Memorial Day scene. So for the United States Army, Major Dave Green, assisted by Jill, who will be helping the rest of you as your names are called to come forward. For the Navy, I would like to ask Dr. Ken Kogut to come forward. By the way, how many Navy people have we got here today? All right, that's good. Please. How many, any Marines? I know we've got Major Tweedy over here. That's just one Marine. Normally, I would speak very slowly and distinctly if there were many Marines in the crowd, but as an assistant for the Veterans Affairs in the city, I think Tom is going to be more than welcome in a moment. But now for the Air Force, to which I'm somewhat partial, I'm going to ask Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Matt Weaver, who is the head of aerospace studies for all of Department 195 or Detachment 195, to lay the Air Force wreath. That comprises 17 schools, universities, by the way, here in Northern Illinois. For the Marine Corps, Tom, if you'd come up, Major Tom Tweedy. We got someone celebrating the Marines with music over here, so that's good. For the Coast Guard, I think guarding our shores are generations of immigrants, and I'd like our host who helped us pledge to the flag, Anil Barrett, to come forward and lay the flag in honor of our Coast Guard. It's not generally known, even accepted yet, that another major force has been added to the force in terms of the Space Force. This is recognition that we need to seek the high ground. And the high ground is obviously up as far as we can go, and we need to make sure we're there and that we are dominant. Fred Weber, who is a graduate of the Naval Academy, and again a longtime participant in this event, is going to do the honors for the Space Force today. I know that Medal of Honor recipients and Al Lynch's organization are often here. They are not with us today. Talked to Al, and I told him that I was going to substitute an historian of note to lay the wreath for the Medal of Honor, and so I'll ask Mark Depew to come forward and help us with that welcome chore, deserved task, understanding that you never earn or win the Medal of Honor. Improper to say so. You are a recipient of the Medal of Honor. Pat McNulty, who used to command 1st District and ended up his career as an assistant superintendent of police, has been with us since 1997. And he's legendary in the Chicago Police Force. And Pat will honor the fallen police officers. Thank you, Pat. Tom D., who is a longtime friend and associate, a man of faith, a man who is accomplished with respect to contributions in the biotech world, will honor us, our fallen fighters, by laying a flag in their honor, or a wreath, excuse me, in their honor. I'm going to ask Don Borling to come forward again. And we don't have any Gold Star families here, do we? Can I see a show of hands if we do? Well, absolutely. That's why Don Borling and his wife Peggy can come forward in honor of being Gold Star family members. Don and I share relatives from World War II who lost their life, and Peggy much more recently. So. Thank you, gang. Your stepson? It was her stepson who died in combat. We have every year had representatives of the Casey family. Don Casey passed, World War II POW. I wear the ring of my uncle, Dick Borling, this was the ring that the bombardier made when they got out of prison camp in World War II. And I asked the sons of Don and Matt, to join us and honor their father and honor the POWs. We're very fortunate to have with us today an officer of the Lincoln Academy. Graham Grady is the treasurer of the Lincoln Academy. As you know, it provides the highest honor that the state provides. It's called the Order of Lincoln. And I'd like Graham, because of his unusual background and that of his family, to offer a couple of words before he lays a wreath.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. John Borling, thank you very much for your leadership. Several years ago, John Borling was honored by the Lincoln Academy of Illinois as being selected as a laureate. The Lincoln Academy of Illinois is appointed by the governor, and its sole purpose is to recognize Illinoisans with the highest civilian honor that the state awards. John Borling, thank you for your service as a military, and thank you for your service ongoing. Very briefly, first of all, I just love the sound of saying Mayor Brandon Johnson. Mayor Johnson, thank you. I also love the sound of a mentor to me who has given tremendously to Chicago, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle. But the reason that John Borling has asked me to give brief remarks is my great-grandfather died in the Civil War. His name was Armstead Grady. He was born a slave in southern Kentucky. In 1863, the United States government passed an act which gave slaves their freedom if they served in the United States colored troops. My great-great-grandfather served in the United States colored troops in the Tennessee military. He was mustered in late 1863, and he died of pneumonia in early 1864. Many of you may know there are more soldiers in the Civil War died of disease and illness than from bullets and cannon fire. So my great-great-grandfather did not die with a rifle in his hand. He was a cook. He died with a ladle in his hand. But I think it's important for all of us to recognize and to thank every person who has given sacrifice of their lives, the ultimate sacrifice, be they service with a gun in their hand, or in the case of my great-great-grandfather, with a ladle in his hand. I think it's also important, as President Preckwinkle pointed out, our military service is as diverse as the United States is today. We've had people of all races serve in our military, contributing to the strength and fabric of our country. And as the great-great-grandson of a person who gave his life for our country, for these United States, it's my distinct honor to lay a wreath today in commemoration of Memorial Day. John, thank you for this honor.
He departed from the script, but what are you going to do? Years ago, the name Pucci rang loud up and down this street. Lawrence and Carol Pucci, who were present at the creation of the events that we talk about here today in 1997 and subsequent years, along with Commissioner Teresa Petrone and a host of others, the Chicago Crime Commission, the Cultural Mile, but it falls to the SOS America Foundation to continue to carry on, and I've been pleased to be the organizer and master of ceremonies for these ceremonies over the years. So Lincoln Academy properly taking its place on the Hill, I would ask at this point that we recognize the contributions of the Pucci family and of the Petrone family, and I can't think of anyone better to do that than a duo, one from Hirsch High School, Fred Sandstrom, but assisted by Alana Ford. And if the two of you would come forward and do the honors with respect to the Wedgwood Society of Illinois, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I've got a special friend in the audience, Pat Brady. We go back a long way, and Pat has long been a supporter of the foundation and the activities of SOS America. It's a service program that argues every young person, 18 to 25 basically, a little older even if they can't pass the test for the all-volunteer force, ought to have an opportunity to serve at least a year in the military in small units and mixed geography across the land so that people meet each other, mix ages because people are different at 18 or 20 or 22 or 23, mix socioeconomic and background levels, and use the military as a tool to do more nation building in America. And I think that would be a noble thing. And we've been working on that program for a number of years. So I'd like Pat Brady to come forward and do that, but assisted by Paul McKay, who has joined us from Pennsylvania today. Paul's an Air Force veteran, commercial pilot, and if Paul and Pat would come forward and do the honors with respect to the SOS America Foundation. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Mayor, if you, accompanied by whomever, your party there, or just you alone, we'd love to have you lay a wreath on the honor of those who have fallen from the city of Chicago. And with thanks to our keynote speaker, President Tony Preckwinkle, if you'll do the honors for Cook County, please. Watch yourself on the stage. You will see that we have additional flowers, but those are for you all to join us afterwards in the picnic in the park, which is hosted. You're all invited. And if you choose to strew some flowers, that's why the red, white, and blue carnations are there for you to do that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Dee Love is with us today. Dee, would you stand up? Where are you? There she is. She is the head of Veterans Affairs for the city of Chicago. We've seen her deputy and was extremely helpful in us putting together the program. But as Tony Preckwinkle takes her place and with the colors repositioned, I would ask you all to stand, please. And from the Police Honor Guard, sound the rifle salute. Sound taps. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal portion of our ceremony. Again, you're welcome to join us for picnic in the park. If you go north on the stairs and you desire to visit the statue that has the 50 flags of the state surrounding it, be careful, they're a little slippery. But we're pleased that you are with us today. Thank you so much.